Can you?
Can I just call Ashwani and tell him that the YouTube link may also be shared?
Okay.
And you are live in YouTube right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ratish, can you see my screen share?
Yeah. You need to share only the application that you want to share. Don't share your desktop.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So click on the PDF that you want to share. Right. And you can. You're using a Windows.
Yeah, 1 minute.
The reason being we are live on YouTube right now.
I understand. Now is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay. You can just click on Control L. It will go on full screen mode.
Is that fine?
This is good.
So how many people do we have now?
Yeah, we've got over 60 attendees right now.
63.
Okay. It's 6 minutes in. Do you want to start now?
Yeah, I'll start. Can I just stop sharing your screen now that you tested it? Because I'll have something to share.
Sure.
Welcome all the participants. We'll start now. Good morning, everybody. The Indian Chamber of Commerce is a premier body of business and industry in India, set up in 1925 by a group of pioneering industrialists. The Chamber has been functioning efficiently and building meaningful synergies among the industry and the government by addressing strategic issues of national significance. It has been instrumental in facilitating better commerce within the country for the last 95 years. Today, I welcome you to a multi-pronged e-conference on raising capital for business in these testing times through a workshop by Mr. Abhishek Fogla, which will be followed by another round of discussion giving a 360-degree view on navigating the currents of capital raise in the coming week. Let me introduce Mr. Abhishek Fogla to you. Mr. Abhishek Fogla is the founder and CEO of Axela Fiduciary and has over 14 years of experience in investment banking, credit rating, credit restructuring, and risk consulting. In his investment banking career, Abhishek has raised over 5,000 crore till date for more than 90 clients, predominantly in the financial services, fintech, education, edtech, and consumer tech sectors. Abhishek has also led ratings for financial institutions across other countries in Asia, Africa, and the European continent. Prior to that, he has led credit risk modeling assignments on loan portfolios of large banks in India, the UAE, and Kenya. In terms of his education, Abhishek holds a master's in management degree from ESCP, EAP Business School in Paris, an MBA degree from MDI, and a bachelor's degree in engineering from RVC. Over to you, Abhishek. You may please start your session, your workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ratish. It's indeed a pleasure and a privilege to get this opportunity on behalf of Indian Chamber of Commerce to be hosting this webinar. I think I do capital raising for a living, and a lot of people have been asking us. I'm also part of the BFSI committee at the Indian Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of queries we were getting around raising capital, especially in these times when the pandemic has taken over the world, and what are the implications of the same, positive and negative. So we thought it might be useful to have a workshop around it. So we have scheduled a 90-minute workshop around this. I plan to use about 30 to 40 minutes at the max to be going through the presentation that I put together. It's a simple presentation. and the rest of the time as questions and answers to make it more interactive. So I welcome all questions. Just would request all participants to please, direct the questions at the end of the session. I'm happy to take all the questions, and if there are queries that we cannot address in this webinar, I'm happy to take them offline as well. And I thank each and every one of you for joining in. It's indeed a privilege to be having your time and being able to talk to you at this juncture. So I'll start by sharing my screen. And if any one of you wants a copy of this presentation later, please feel free to email me or Atish. We'd be most happy to share it with you. And I'm always available, if there are any queries or any help that is required in this regard by any participant in this forum or any member of the Indian Chamber of Commerce. I would also like to thank from the Indian Chamber of Commerce the president, Mr. Mayank Jalan, Ratish, who's the Western head, and they have been very dynamic. Mr. Ashwini and Ms. Louisa. So they have been very, very helpful to making this possible. So I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to them, to the entire team, and specifically to the Western Region team led by Ratish, Ashwini, and Louisa. Thank you. I'll start sharing my screen right now. I hope my voice is audible, Ratish.
Yes, perfect. Please.
Perfect. Okay, so the webinar is obviously on raising financial capital during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. So let me get on. Yeah. So you're able to see the second screen, right, Ratish? I'm just checking.
Yes.
Okay. So starting with the economic fallout of COVID-19 in India. So as of yesterday, audience, India has just crossed China's tally with 85,000+ confirmed cases. So India is now among the most infected countries in the world, soon to enter 6 digits, right? And the pace of growth in India is quite high. So it is definitely something of concern, and which may have lasting ramifications or lasting repercussions on our economy. We also need to keep in mind that India is also the diabetes capital of the world after China with 6 crore diabetics. We have a chronic problem of heart disease, which leads to a high comorbidity risk. So therefore, the death toll that India will have over time will have a devastating effect economically, needless to say. And that's why the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, had imposed the lockdown. But today we are going to discuss the economic effects of the same. So the UN has forecasted the Indian economy to grow by 1.2% in this calendar year, 2020. Other sources as recent as yesterday have forecasted Indian growth of GDP to be negative in this financial year. In this 5-week lockdown, most economic activity, needless to say, has come to a grinding halt, except essential services like hospitals, like agriculture, like kirana shops. Most economic activity, most businesses, factories have been shut. So I think this is very well known to all of us. Economy was hit very hard by demonetization 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. So in November 2016, when the government had come out with the demonetization guidelines, then there was a profound, cascading impact on the economy over time. This time, however, it's going to be much harsher. The reason being that in the time of demon, the only thing missing was liquid currency. Cash was not available, but people were still stepping out of their houses. They were still working. They were still active. They were still productive. In these times, people are sitting in their homes. They're not working. I mean, okay, you are working from home, but factories are not running. Taxis are not flying. Airlines are not running. Hotels are shut. Restaurants are not running. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of the economy that is not functioning at all. So, this is bound, this COVID-19 pandemic is bound to have a much harder impact on the economy than demonetization or probably any other, I would say, event that has happened to India in a very, very long time. It's almost, I would say, akin to a war. Indian manufacturing PMI fell. PMI is is an index used to measure manufacturing. It fell to 27.4 in the month of April in India. The level to which this has fallen is actually among the lowest globally. Yeah, it's shocking, but India is among the most hardest hit countries from a manufacturing degrowth point of view, given that most of the factories were shut. Let me give you another example of how harsh this lockdown and the pandemic has been on India. Sales in the auto sector, I'm just taking one sector. Maruti, Mahindra, Bajaj Auto, these are all household names, aren't they? But all of them had zero domestic sales in April. Yes, Bajaj and others, I mean, Mahindra had some sales of agricultural machinery towards the end of, April, and they had some export revenues, all three of them, but domestic sales was zero. So you can imagine when large behemoths and blue chips like this, have to survive with zero sales, you can understand what the cascading impact on the rest of the economy is. The rate of unemployment was 22.9% in the month of April versus 8.7% in the month of March. It is estimated that almost 12 crore people have become unemployed in India. Demand has plunged nationwide and catapulted us into, the risk of a deep recession. And the most important point, dear audience, is that the extension of the lockdown is perhaps a big risk to the further derailment of the economy. I mean, I would hate to be in the Indian government's shoes right now, or any government for that matter, because they're caught between the devil and the deep sea. If you don't lock down the country, then these cases will spiral out of hand. If you do lock down the country, there's a devastating economic impact. And we have all seen what has happened to migrant laborers and others, because of hardship, economic hardship. And there is loss of life, left, right, and center. So, it's a difficult choice. But I think the kudos to the central and the state governments across the country. They've been trying hard to balance both protecting people from the pandemic as well as bolstering economic activity. The economic fallout of COVID-19 in India has been such that supply lines have been disrupted globally. As you can imagine, there's a lot of import exports happening. India has a very high import dependency as an economy, and supply lines globally have been disrupted. Companies are not functioning, demand production output is low in factories because workers are not coming in. Fewer ships are plying, fewer trucks are running. So there's a systemic sort of disruption of the supply chain. That also has a cascading impact on the economy because goods have to move. If goods don't move, then it's difficult to get into the end customer and helps have them sold. All major economies are declaring stimulus packages in hopes of reviving their economies. I think this is something that everyone knows about, so I won't want to harp on that. Crime in Indian cities is on the rise. So further economic stress may lead to riots or even loot. So in Italy, which is one of the most affected countries in the world globally, we have seen cases in southern Italy and even in the US, for example, of people rioting in small towns, breaking into supermarkets, looting stores. So this happens because, there's a limit to which people can run on their savings. The moment savings get exhausted, people have to survive. Well, if my child is hungry and I need to feed him or her, then, well, if I don't have money and it comes to looting, then perhaps I might justify it. So further economic stress, if the government does not lift the lockdown, will lead to or may lead to riots or loot. Now, there's a few more aspects from an investment viewpoint that you should understand, which is that there is a widening fiscal deficit in India. Now, I'm going to try to, speak in as layman a language as possible, given that a lot of the viewers may also be people who are not very savvy financially. So fiscal deficit for any country is basically how much your expenditure of the entire government or the entire economy, the expenditure of the government is exceeding the revenue of the government. So the government earns revenue through taxes, and through taxes, predominantly through taxes, through import levies, etc. And the expenditure in all the salaries of the public sector servants, the employees, taking care of the roads, welfare schemes, etc. So India has been a country which has a fiscal deficit, which means that its expenditure is more than its income. Countries which have more income than expenditure are called fiscal surplus economies. So India's fiscal deficit is widening, obviously, because the government is getting lesser revenue because people are earning lesser. Many companies are bound to be unprofitable in this financial year, or may actually break even. So they will not be giving lots of taxes this year, but the burden on the government, the economic burden on the government has risen because of the stimulus and because of other factors, because they've been having to spend so much. This will further stress the already high levels of government debt. So when your expenditure basically exceeds your income, one of the options that the government has, so you can print money, you can take more debt. How do you finance a deficit? So basically, if you print more money, then it leads to inflationary issues. It leads to high inflation. So one of the forms of bridging a fiscal deficit is to actually borrow. So it's widely expected that the government will borrow more domestically and perhaps internationally as well. So it will further stress the already high levels of the government debt. The next point, which is of very, very high consequence, is that NPAs or non-performing assets. What do non-performing assets mean? Essentially, any loan that a bank or a financial institution gives, right, is an asset to them because they earn out of it. Any loan which is not coming back, where the person who has borrowed or the institution who has borrowed is not paying back, is called a non-performing asset or an NPA. An NPA is one of the basic benchmarks with which the financial industry, the banking industry is measured. If too much of NPAs are there, banks will become unprofitable because the amount that they're earning as interest will be eaten up by the amount of bad loans that they have, by the loss of the money because of the bad loans. So NPAs are already stressed. I mean, the Indian financial sector has already been stressed by NPAs because of various issues, large corporates, Kingfisher, Jet Airways, Nirav Modi. I'm talking about the fraud cases. There are other cases as well which are in default. So the Indian financial sector was already stressed. Now, with this pandemic, it is expected widely that NPAs will rise further, which is a huge cause of worry. 72% of outstanding bank credit, of outstanding bank loans are in red zones or in zones which have been labeled as red by the Indian government, basically where coronavirus is rampant, basically the urban areas mostly. So 72% of outstanding bank credit is in these areas. If these areas do not function, how will the people who have borrowed pay back? It's a genuine cause of concern. Availability of capital and labor. Companies are built on two pillars. Financial capital. If you don't have money, it's very difficult to run a company or start a company, right? You need to buy assets, you need to invest in people, etc. And the other thing is people. If you don't have people, again, you cannot run a company. So the two basic tenets of running a company are availability of capital and labor. And these are both going to be critical issues. Capital we have already spoken about to some extent, but labor is going to be a very big issue because much of the blue collar labor, the factory class, the workers, have run away to their hometowns from the cities, from the factories where they are. And it's not known when they will come back. They will wonder, what if we go back? What if we catch the virus? We are already in debt. It's difficult to survive. So it's going to be difficult to attract labor back. And that's going to be a huge challenge. Cost of life and health insurance is on the rise. Needless to say, this is being seen perhaps globally because incidences of insurance claims are going up because of the pandemic. increased levels of working from home is going to become a permanent trend. I don't know if you guys have seen, but Twitter, the big international tech company, they have said, the CEO has said that we plan to make work from home a permanent thing, and we are trying to move all our employees or most of our employees to be working from home. So people have realized that in some cases like technology, etc., where physical presence is not mandatory, it is perhaps easier and more productive to have people working from home. And this is going to become a permanent trend, at least in the white collar services sector. Assurance of employee safety is going to be critical to attracting people back to work, whether white collar, blue collar, whether high paid, low paid. Anyone who joins their place of work right now is going to be questioning, is my place of work safe? That's going to be a national issue. So employers will have to be addressing this issue. Let me quickly take you through what the finance minister and her team has declared. The stimulus package, the stimulus package, I'm sorry, on MSMEs, housing and discoms. I've just made it a few bullets, the main bullets, so that you can understand it. 3 lakh crore of collateral-free loans are going to be given to 45 lakh MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises. The small businesses, which are the backbone of any economy, including India. So I think this is a wonderful step by the Modi government to have declared this. And this is going to be hugely beneficial in recapitalizing or replenishing the capital reserves of the MSME sector. 50,000 crores, not only debt, the first 3 lakh crores is debt, but the government has said that they're going to establish an FOF or a fund of funds. So 50,000 crores of equity will be invested into small MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises, through a fund of funds established by the Indian government. The definition of MSME is going to be broadened. Earlier, it was a little restrictive. It's going to be broadened to make it more inclusive so that more and more institutions in the country can benefit from it. About a few years ago, the Indian government has actually, established a ministry of MSME. Now, before that, the concept of a ministry of MSME or the thrust on MSME was not there. The MSME Act, I think it was established in 2006, if I'm not wrong. So the Indian government has a huge stress on MSMEs because if they collapse, then there's going to be mayhem in the economy. It's going to be absolute carnage. So 3 lakh of debt support, 3 lakh crore of debt support and 50,000 crore of equity support is going to be hugely beneficial. Any MSME receivables, any place where an MSME has billed the government and their invoices have not been cleared, obviously subject to satisfactory delivery of goods and services. Over there, the MSME receivables are going to be released in 45 days. Very welcome step to injecting cash into the economy. Statutory PF contribution. There is something called as Provident Fund, where every employee in a company which has more than, I think, 20 employees has to contribute a percentage of their salary as Provident Fund, which is given to the government of India for investment, which helps them when they retire. And the company also matches the contribution and gives a similar contribution. So currently, the PF contribution is about 12%. The government has reduced it from 12% to 10% so that more cash can trickle down to the hands of the customers so that they can spend more. They can spend more, yeah. So this is to enhance liquidity or to stress MSMEs. MSMEs which are already gasping for breath, which are struggling to survive. The government has said that banks will be giving them 20,000 crores of subordinated debt. Or this is an instrument which is used, which is like equity, but not equity. It is somewhere it has characteristics of both debt and equity. So it's called subordinated debt. So 20,000 crores of subordinated debt will be given to stressed MSMEs. Discoms, which are the electricity distribution companies, they have been hugely affected because industry has not been running, offices have not been running. So people have not been using electricity. So their revenues have fallen. So again, if you don't support them, they will collapse, the electricity system will collapse. So the government has given us a staggering 90,000 crores of liquidity injection to struggling discoms. Pending tax returns to be cleared at the earliest. So a lot of people and institutions have their tax returns pending. That will be cleared, which will provide liquidity. TDS or TCS rates are reduced. So basically, tax deducted at source and tax collected at source. These are metrics whenever institutions make payments, right? Either to people, to employees, to consultants, to vendors. There is something called as TDS where they have to withhold a certain percentage of the invoice value or of the expense paid as tax, and they directly deposit it with the government. The government has said that please reduce it by 25%. So much of this money will now flow down to the general public and the economy. 2% interest subvention for Mudra Shishu loans. Mudra is an apex body which also helps MSMEs in the country. It's a bank, owned by the government of India. They have something called as the Mudra Shishu loans, and there is a 2% interest subvention. So any borrower from Mudra, clearing the application criteria can derive a 2% interest subvention or benefit of 2% interest based on the scheme that the government has come out with. 5,000 crores has been sanctioned as credit or loans to your street vendors, to your pani puri walas, to your bhel puri walas, to your pav bhaji walas, to your sweet shops, people who are selling on the street, who are the most vulnerable. People are not coming to them because they're scared about hygiene. They're not able to survive. So the government has said, I believe it's about 10,000 rupees or so per individual can be sanctioned by banks. And like this, if lakhs of individuals are sanctioned, then 5,000 odd crores is what the government has put aside for giving loans to street vendors. And one of the last points on this slide, a staggering 70,000 crores has been set aside for CLSS or Credit Linked Subsidy Scheme, which is if a middle class family earning in a specific band, the lower middle class, right? If they clear the eligibility norms and they buy a house, then they are given basically a subvention on the interest. They're given a little bit of relief on the interest. And that is called the CLSS scheme or the Credit Linked Subsidy Scheme. The government has said that 70,000 crores will be demarcated for the scheme so that middle class people may be motivated to buy their own houses. Real estate is expected to come down, prices are expected to come down, loans will become more affordable, which means that people who were thinking of buying a house and sitting on the fence can finally take a decision. And if they do that, the real estate sector in the country will benefit, which is one of the largest employers of the country. Going forward, agriculture. This is a tremendous area. As you know, India is heavily dependent on agriculture. I mean, it is the largest employer in India as a sector, right? May not be in terms of value, right? In terms of value, services and manufacturing might be more than agriculture or may not. But in terms of number of lives impacted and in numbers of households who earn out of agriculture, it is the backbone of the economy. The government has come out with, I would say, tremendously beneficial norms and laws for the agricultural sector. Let me take an example. If you remember, in 1991, when Manmohan Singh was the finance minister under the then Prime Minister Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao, they had opened up the Indian economy. Before that, it was closed, it was quite closed. They had opened it up, and after that, the stock market took off, jobs took off. Basically, the quality in life in India has undergone a permanent change after that. What triggered it then was something called as the balance of payments crisis, which I will not get into right now. But I think, and I think a lot of people think, that the stimulus package in agriculture, which the government has thought through right now, it is large-scale reforms, which is akin to the reforms that the Manmohan Singh-led government, the P.V. Narasimha Rao government did in 1991. It is so critical. Let me get into a few points. Substantial reforms in agriculture, amending Essential Commodities Act. Essential Commodities Act essentially entailed that there were supply caps, there were pricing caps. So much of commodities, food grains, etc., used to be put in government godowns, which led to artificial pricing, or which led to the absence of free market pricing in the in the economy. Amending the Essential Commodities Act is going to be hugely beneficial to farmers. E-trading or economic or electronic trading is going to be given a lot of impetus. All barriers from interstate trade will be removed, or most of the barriers will be removed. And the government is trying very hard to enact laws which directly link farmers to companies and to consumers, thus removing the layers of middlemen in between and directly benefiting the farmers who deserve perhaps more a better life, a better revenue structure for the hard work and toil that they put in. 30,000 crores of refinance for farmers under NABARD. For farmers who have already been financed loans by banks, NABARD, which is again the National Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development, they will buy from banks, or they will refinance the facilities to the extent of 30,000 crores, providing a lot of liquidity into the banks for further loans. 2 lakh crore of credit to farmers under the Kisan Credit Card Scheme. Interest subvention of 2% to dairy cooperatives. So all dairy cooperatives will be entitled to getting loans with a 2% interest subvention. 1 lakh crore to an agri-infra fund. This is huge because a lot of food in our country goes to waste because warehouses are not there, cold storage facilities are not there, the supply chain, the infrastructure is just not there. So rats eat it up, it's stolen, it's pilfered, weather destroys it. Especially vegetables become rotten because they don't have cold storage facilities. So 1 lakh crore is what the government has earmarked to the Agricultural Infrastructure Fund for cold storage and warehousing. Rupees 10,000 crore for formalization of micro food enterprises or cluster approach. Let me explain to you what this means. Kashmir is very, very famous for saffron, acacia. Let's say in Andhra Pradesh, it's very, very famous for red chilies, right? So there are pockets in this country, which Kerala is very famous for spices, coffee. So there are clusters in the Indian economy for agricultural, growth. So there are these MFIS or the micro food enterprises which are there. Now these are growing. So, for example, in Muzaffarpur in Bihar, right? You have a lot of lychees being the lychees over there are world famous. A lot of them are exported, but the people who are the farmers manufacturing the lychees, they don't have the branding, they don't have the know-how, they don't have the quality certificates to basically get better value for their money. And these are the micro food enterprises. Rupees 10,000 crores will be earmarked to build their capacities, to make them formalized from the informal MFEs that they are, which will directly benefit the farmers. 20,000 crores will be benefiting the fisheries sector. Fish, prawns, basically the entire seafood sector is going to benefit from this. 15,000 crore for animal husbandry infrastructure development fund. So for veterinary clinics, for cattle, for goats, for pigs, better feed, better, whatever is needed from an animal husbandry perspective, 15,000 crores is going to go into develop infrastructure towards that. 4,000 crores towards the promotion of herbs. 500 crores for the honey sector or the beekeeping sector. 50% subsidy on storage or cold storage, and 50% subsidy for transportation of goods from agricultural surplus areas to agricultural deficit areas. Huge. These are huge steps taken by the Indian government, and I must congratulate the Indian government for this major push to agriculture that they've given. And last but not the least, 6,000 crore push for employment generation through CAMPA. So there's a scheme called CAMPA, which is basically meant for afforestation. So basically planting trees, ensuring that our environment is protected, the water table is protected. 6,000 crores will be earmarked for this scheme, which will entail tremendous employment generation, and which will light up the kitchens of lakhs of our fellow citizens in this country. The stimulus package for banking, NBFCs and HFCs. I'm sorry, I think this is taking a little longer, but I'll try to run through it. Reduction. So this is very important because these are the banks and the non-bank financial companies, the MFIs. These are the providers of capital to the whole economy. If they don't perform well, nothing performs well. So reduction of CRR. Banks are required to hold a certain percentage of the deposits as cash with the RBI, as called as CRR. CRR has been reduced, which leads to banks being able to get liquidity to the extent of 1,37,500 crores. Targeted long-term repo operations. These are technical terms for TLRTO. These are 1 lakh crores has been given to banks for fresh deployment in investment-grade bonds, commercial paper, and non-convertible debenture, basically debt instruments for Indian companies. Again, TLRTO of 50,000 crores has been earmarked for banks to support the same debt instruments for NBFCs and MFIs. The non-bank financial companies are the ones that typically financed the smaller, people, the retail public. They take on more risk than banks, and MFIs are the ones who are responsible for financing the bottom of the pyramid, the most the poorest of our fellow citizens, maids, drivers, gardeners, small kirana shops, that lady who sits outside the temple selling flower garlands. Who finances her? The MFIs finance her. The NBFC finances your local factory, which employs 5 to 10 people. More than the banks, the NBFCs and the MFIs need to be given support so that they can continue to do the good work that they have been doing in the past. 50,000 crores has been outlaid for them. Banks' limits for overnight borrowing has been enhanced to the tune of 1,37,000 crores. 30,000 crores of debt lines to NBFCs, nearly rupees 1,70,000 crore of NBFC debt is falling due in June. So 30,000 crores of further debt lines to NBFCs to ensure that they are not stressed, their operations are not stressed, and that they continue financing the Indian consumers as well as the Indian MSMEs. Right? That is the intent of the government. And there is something called as the PCGS scheme or the Partial Credit Guarantee Scheme, wherein 45,000 crores has been outlaid for NBFCs and MFIs to be selling off whatever loans that they have created to the banks. And if there is a default on the loans, 20% of the first loss or the FLDG will be provided by the government of India. It's a huge step which will provide much needed respite to the NBFC and the MFI sector. Okay, so a lot of people had asked prior to this, they had emailed to the ICC, which are the sectors which we should invest in. I saw some 4 or 5 questions over there, right? Or which are the sectors that we should invest in? Which are the areas where we should put in our money? So there were people who are wanting to put in the money. So I've put in a list of sectors, which I will briefly go through. Agriculture, dairy, and animal husbandry. This is going to go through the roof. People are not going to stop eating, right? Babies are not going to stop drinking milk, right? People who love non-veg, they're going to keep eating non-veg. So that's not going to stop, no matter what pandemic comes or doesn't come. So this sector is going to do very well. And especially with what the government has, done with the reforms, I think this is going to be very, very, very attractive. Digital entertainment. Now, any kind of digital entertainment platform, for example, Amazon Prime, for example, Netflix, for example, Hotstar, so there are so many digital platforms, right, which are there. They have increasingly become popular because people have realized that spending time at home, you can't go to the mall, you can't go to the cinema. So what do? You watch movies, you watch shows, you watch cartoons at home. YouTube, it's a big source of digital entertainment. So digital entertainment sector is booming like crazy. In fact, there's a live ongoing tussle for people who are interested between cinema companies like theater companies like PVR, Inox, etc., which are listed companies, and between these OTT platforms, these digital entertainment platforms, because a lot of producers are planning to basically, release their films over digital platforms and bypassing the theaters altogether. They're saying, anyways, people are not going to come to theaters in the times of this pandemic, so why should I waste my time? So this is something which is a structural change that is happening. It's like cameras, right? Initially, 20 years ago, we used to have those film cameras, right? We used to put in those Kodak, Konica, Sakura films, Fuji. Now, does anyone use film cameras? No, it's become obsolete. Similarly, digital entertainment is the future. And if you can invest in a good digital entertainment company, you should do that. E-commerce. People are not again going to shopping markets. They're not going to physical stores. They're going lesser. I'm not saying they're not, but they're going to lesser of the physical stores. People want things delivered to their home. So any kind of e-commerce, and there are a lot of Indian e-commerce companies, right, which are doing very well. Nykaa, for example, right, has done phenomenally well. NYKAA. Look up the company. They've done phenomenally well. First Cry. It's an example of a company which is, selling children's dresses, toys, children's items, right? It's done phenomenally well. So there are e-commerce is the future. If you could see good e-commerce companies which you can target investment, do so. Education technology, very, very big. Even in this pandemic, the sector which has gotten some of the largest funding is, one of the sectors which has gotten the largest amount of foreign funding and even domestic funding is education technology. People need to educate their children. People need to educate themselves. If you're not able to go to schools, colleges, preschools, what do? You rely on technology. You rely on webinars. You rely on interactive sessions virtually. So education technology is again going to be the future. Skilling. A lot of labor is not going to come back or may not come back. They may stick to doing agriculture, etc. So there's going to be a huge deficit of labor. But someone who was skilled in handling a machine in a factory, now you no longer have someone like that. Now you find a new guy who's willing to take the job, but he's not qualified. So you have to skill them. So skilling is again going to become a huge area of investment. Export-oriented industries. Any good Indian companies which are exporting, right, are good investment targets. Right? Let me give you an example. I have a company that I work closely with called Glasswall. Glasswall Technology is based in Bombay. They make the facade of glasses, the glass facade on the buildings. You would have seen in places like Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, or Calcutta, any metropolitan city, you will find some of these shiny glass buildings. The facade is made of specialized glass, and these are specialized products. This company manufactures these glasses, these specialized things, and these are exported abroad. They have been getting good amount of orders from abroad, and that is example of an export-oriented industry which is doing well. So any export-oriented industry where demand is still robust is a very investable opportunity in my opinion. FMCG or consumer staples, needless to say, juices, soaps, shampoos, toothpaste, these are all to be in vogue. Anything which the consumer needs, right, is going to be in demand, and that is something which is not going to be affected much because of this pandemic. Fitness. A lot of people have realized, staying at home, introspected, that how important health is, right, to them. So fitness is again going to be something which is going to be of very, very high investable nature, and I would genuinely encourage people to invest in good fitness companies. Gaming. Now, entertainment, especially for the younger population, has moved from TV, from all of these things, to basically playing video games. And this is happening across basically age groups, especially so in the teenagers and in people who are less than 35. But across ages, people are spending more and more time playing games, whether it's poker, whether it's rummy, whether it's Need for Speed, whether it's any other game, whether it's Temple Run. People are spending time playing on the internet and entertaining themselves. This has become a huge, huge, huge industry. And there are going to be several billion-dollar companies that come out of this. Healthcare, no-brainer, right? In a time of an epidemic, what is going to save? Their business is going to be booming. So healthcare, including Ayush, is going to be a very good opportunity to invest in. Insurance, life and health is going to do very well because people are going to become increasingly risk averse given what has happened. Excuse me. People are going to be increasingly, wary about taking on risk. Logistics, medical devices, neobanks. These are all neobanks are digital-only banks, which interact with customers not through physical means, but only through digital means. Pharmaceuticals, biotech companies. Today, I was reading an article that a company in the US has said that they've come out with a potential cure for coronavirus. It's a biotech company. Their stock price apparently has gone up twice since this announcement came. Obviously, if they have done this, they've done a huge service to mankind, right? So pharmaceuticals, biotech, solar energy. I think a lot of the cost of energy is going up. As global warming goes up, people are using more and more air conditioners. Energy demand is going up in all ways, right? People are switching from petrol vehicles and diesel vehicles to electric vehicles. So generation of electricity is going to become a huge issue. And India has to, I mean, even the Modi government says that solar energy is one of the things in the future. So solar energy and renewable energy in general is going to be the need of the hour. Telecom. You have all seen how much money Jio has been able to raise. I think there were a lot of players in the telecom market. Many of them have died or have been acquired. Now there are three odd, big players in the markets. There is Airtel, there is Jio, there is Vodafone, Reliance, Vodafone Idea. So the telecom sector, both handheld devices, telecommunications, data consumption, this is going to be also very attractive, I think, going forward. And the last thing that I would say is waste management, sanitation, and water. Water is increasingly becoming scarce. Sanitation is a problem. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, etc. Waste management. These are the sectors, few of them, which I have listed out, which are going to do extremely well, in my opinion, in the coming years. And a broad theme that I put together is digitization of current physical processes. So anything wherein you are having a digitization, a physical process, once you can digitize it, it becomes extremely, valuable. For example, Zoom, what we are using right now, their stock price or their valuation has gone up tremendously since the pandemic started, because so many people are now conducting business through Zoom, including us, right? We are using Zoom. So any kind of digitization of a current physical process, right? Typically, I would have been speaking at a hotel, right? Indian Chamber of Commerce would have booked a hall in a 5-star hotel, and I would be speaking over there. But that's not happening. We are speaking over the internet. And that is exactly what I mean when I say digitalization of current physical process. Look up such companies. Going forward, general advice to SMEs and startups. I'm going to run through this now. Cash is king. Conserve it if you have it. You should do whatever it takes. Rationalize, reduce salaries if required, downsize if you can't manage, cut any expenditure that you cannot do without, that you can do without. Essentially, do whatever it takes to conserve your cash. Focus is going to be, for startups specifically, profitability and capital efficiency. Gone are the days when you would be burning money to acquire customers. It's not going to work. You have to show very, very strong unit economics. Your customers have to be profitable. You have to be a profitable business. You cannot compromise growth. Sorry, you cannot compromise profitability at the expense of growth. Okay, let's grow. Let's grow our revenue 5 times this year or 3 times this year. It's okay. If we lose money, we'll raise more capital. I don't think investors are going to like that idea a lot right now, because people have become very focused on profitability, which is the #1 tenet of business. I believe every crisis throws up an opportunity to gain market share and competitive advantage. This is the time to think about what you can do in your company and your sector, to think what you can do differently and to gain competitive advantage and market share. Do not sit on your chair waiting for this lockdown to end, waiting for a cure or a vaccine to come. Be sort of take initiative. Take initiative. Be proactive in basically seeing where all you have opportunities to earn and to increase business. Be innovative. That's the need of the hour. Customer engagement, retention, and repeat revenue is going to be the key. Once you get a customer, deliver such good quality to them, whether it's goods or services, that they keep coming back to you. That's when you have a really good business. Blue collar availability will always be a challenge now. Obviously, because of the labor having gone back. I think we've spoken much about this. Employee health also we have spoken about. India is also at a high risk of the COVID infection spikes now that the business has opened up, right? In other economies where we have seen that they have opened up their economies after the lockdown, they have seen a sudden spike in the coronavirus patients. So we have to brace that this crisis of coronavirus, this pandemic is going to be long drawn. So in case you're loss making, maximize your runway. Stretch your cash for as long as you can and try to break even. Lastly, for founders of companies, I would say your leadership skills should be running over time now. The one thing that you need to do is motivate your employees, motivate your workforce. Tell them that it's going to be all okay. Tell them that, we are going to come out of this stronger. We are going to be a very big company. And if you are, one of the thoughts that I have, especially for larger companies, is that if you are reducing their take-home salaries, then consider being generous and giving them shares in your company, right? Consider giving them shares. So you can actually say that, work hard and then we'll profit of this together. So that's another takeaway that I would encourage you to think about. Going forward, raising equity. I think valuations, it's going to go down across the board. Public markets have been crashed globally as well as in India. If public markets valuations go down, private markets will also go down. Private equity, private companies, I mean. So if you need funds, don't fret, don't worry about dilution right now. Arey baba, mera itna 25% dilution ho jayega, 20% dena padega, itna. Arey, forget it. Surviving is of paramount importance. If you don't survive, you'll have nothing to worry about. Basically, if you keep holding on to your equity and let's say your company doesn't survive, then 80% or 70% or 60% or whatever, or 100% of your company, of a bankrupt company is zero. Better than that, you give some equity, raise funds, even if it's at a lower valuation, an attractive valuation to the investor, so that you are well capitalized. As I always say, having a slice of a watermelon is much better than having a single grape. Think about that. On the private markets, private equity and venture capital funds are sitting on loads of cash. They are waiting and watching. And some of those sectors which I described are going to be on their target list of investees. So capital will come to you if you are patient and attractive to investors. So if you deserve it, it will come to you. Be patient about it. Because these people have to deploy the cash. Fundamental policy changes by the Indian government throw up massive opportunities in large sectors like agriculture. I strongly believe in this. Whatever systemic changes the government is doing because of this pandemic, it's going to be hugely, hugely beneficial to the economy and will throw up massive investment opportunities. On the private side, Series A or seed fundraisers, basically earlier stage fundraisers, will be very difficult now going forward. Investors will be much, much, much more choosy because they will have a lot of options available with them. So the companies which are more mature, which is the growth equity companies, they will still see healthy demand for their equity shares. But the earlier stage companies are going to see, a bit of a challenge in raising equity going forward. A slew of IPOs is expected to hit the market once markets stabilize because every company needs money right now. Many of them are burning through the cash that they have because they're not earning much, but they're spending, they're giving their salaries, etc. So they will need to go back to the market and raise funds. So expect a lot of companies to come back to the market once this pandemic and once financial markets stabilize. I think some of the people had asked me about what we should be doing, especially for private companies looking to raise capital. Work on bettering your virtual pitches. So like I'm talking right now, practice in front of a mirror, especially for founders. Work on bettering your virtual pitches. Make it concise, short. The more short you are, the more concise you are, the more numbers you can blend in to show how your business works. It is going to be that much more easier for an investor to take a call. Also, the quality of your documents should be very good. It should be very short, concise, and crisp, and preferably as graphical as possible. Don't look at my presentation as an example, but most well-done presentations are very graphical in nature. So once you do a short graphical presentation, and if you are able to get a 15-minute window with a venture capitalist or a private equity funder or a half-an-hour window, you should seek to basically practice your pitch at least a dozen times so that you have perfected it by the time you are able to deliver it to them. Be very concise and clearly label out your unit economics, the strength of your business, the competitive advantage, and of course, why you think they should be choosing you as compared to the rest of the companies in the market. It is not the ideal time to start a business if you haven't already, unless it's a rockstar idea or your papa is Mr. Ambani, right? So if you have a lot of money, do start a business. If you don't, it's probably not the right time. I would encourage waiting maybe a year or so and then thinking about starting up. One more advice that I have for companies, especially smaller ones, are if you are finding survival difficult or challenging, think about merging. Think about collaborating with the competitors and merging the companies together. You will get immediate economies of scale. Yes, I understand. It may mean giving up power, giving up control to a certain extent. It may mean sharing decision making. But if you do that, mergers can be a very good way of actually bringing financial scale and financial prudence to any company. If you, God forbid, find yourself in a downward spiral and you're unable to control the situation, nothing is working, you are looking at imminent death, then seriously consider selling off your company before that position comes. No one's going to buy your company if you're imminently going to die. But before that situation comes, if you can clearly see it coming, try and see whether you can sell off your company. This is only in the worst case scenario where you're not able to handle things and you need to salvage whatever you have. If there ever was a time to call favors, to tap family, friends, well-wishers for cash, offer them attractive investment opportunities in your company so that they can invest. They will be people who will believe in you. They will be people who trust you. Be generous with them, give them good returns, and get their money. This is the time, more than ever. One other thing is that when the going gets tough, right, a lot of fair weather friends go off. So if you are running a company with the co-founder or co-founders, right, I would encourage you to basically have agreements in place such that you clearly know what will happen if someone exits the business and someone decides to leave the business and go on and do something else with their lives. If you haven't done it, I would really encourage doing it. Otherwise, it can lead to a lot of heartburn later on. On the raising debt part of it, if you need money and you can get debt, take it now, before it goes away. Of course, provided you can service the debt in the future. Because equity is a very valuable commodity, right? You are going to be diluting ownership of your company if you raise equity. If you can get the same thing through debt, and debt is, by the way, let me tell you, it's a tax deductible expense. So you get a tax break on it. Someone who is paying 12% with a 30% tax rate, right, is actually paying 12 minus 3.6 or 8.4% rate of interest, not 12%, because you're getting a tax deduction which you would have paid. You would have paid higher taxes had you not had this interest on your books. So if you get debt right now, take it and run. Avail of government schemes where applicable. Educate yourself about what's applicable to your firm and how you can benefit. Delay capital investment. Do not set up new factories. Do not set up new things if you can, right? If you can afford to wait, my advice to you would be to wait right now. Debt is also likely to come at higher interest rate levels, given that the BFSI sector, the banking and financial services sector, the NBFCs, the banks, the MFIS, etc., are all dealing with rising non-performing assets or bad loans, as I told you. So expect that you will pay more for the debt, but be thankful that the debt is there if you get it. Offshore debt or external commercial borrowings, etc., may be more difficult to get as foreign economies deal with their own issues, right, with their own problems. And Europe, US, etc., the two major markets from where capital comes into Indian shores, they're all reeling from coronavirus. So I think they have their own issues, and even due diligence related travel, if the people have to travel here for diligence, etc., that's going to be difficult. So I would say external borrowings is going to be a bit muted in the near future, in the near to medium term. Of course, in the long term, India is a brilliant destination for the world to invest in. Domestic debt without hard collateral to SMEs is likely to be available more from NBFCs, cooperatives, MFIs. Tap them. Yes, I know you'll be paying more, but tap them because you're getting money when you need it. They'll be very quick as well. Banks also give it, but banks are a little more stringent on asking for hard collateral before giving loans. if you need to finance working capital or short-term, money issues through term loans of short tenure, do it. No problem. I would encourage you to do so. Debt mutual funds for investors is likely to see an investor exodus, because Franklin Templeton has wound up 6 of their funds in India. So the faith of the Indian consumer over debt mutual funds in India is slowly eroding. I think SEBI will be stepping in to make systemic changes to this. But I think debt mutual funds is likely, because of debt mutual funds not being so well capitalized, because of investor interest being lost over there, or muted over there, corporate debt issuances will become, listed corporate debt issuances will become more muted in the near to medium term, unless and until you're giving a very, very good juicy return, which investors will be attracted by. One other option for the startup friends or SME friends of mine is venture debt or mezzanine funding. This is a very attractive option to raise funds. It's a large, I can speak about an hour, I can speak for an hour about this, but I don't have the luxury of the time. Venture debt or mezzanine funding is something between debt and equity. It has characteristics of both debt and equity, where you pay a fixed rate of return, for example, with some amount of equity upside. Google it, read through it. There's a lot of literature available. Happy to speak to you if you'd like to know more or if you'd like to raise funds. But this can be a very, very good option. If you are looking at banks, my first preference would be PSU banks because they are flush with cash. After the Yes Bank fiasco, I think a lot of capital has flown to public sector banks and they are flush with the cash. So they would be my first choice for larger enterprises. And export credit with reliable buyers abroad are bound to be attractive. So I would say export credit is something where, as I told you, I give you an example, right? I think they're going to be having a lot of good takers, for export credit for companies which are performing well. This is a brief about me. You have my email ID and my phone number over there, which I will leave with you. At this point of time, I think I've gone through my presentation. It's taken longer than I envisaged. I apologize for that, but I'm happy to throw open the floor for question and answers at this juncture. Thank you.
Mr. Fogla, if you can just click on the Q&A icon at the bottom. There are a few questions which have already come in. 1 minute.
Should I stop the screen share?
You may want to stop the screen share, or if you want to use any of the slides as reference, then you may want to just keep it up.
Raghav Tibdewal has asked, how can these collateral free loans be availed? Any guidelines? So I would encourage you to look into SIDBI, Mudra, 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 SIDBI, Small Industries Development Bank of India. SIDBI and Mudra are two apex agencies which give collateral free loans. Now, with the government coming out with guidelines, all banks will also be providing the same. So you can contact any banks, for this. Preferably someone who you have been banking with, someone who knows you would be the better bet from my perspective. And for specialized agencies, you can target people like SIDBI and Mudra. You can also, if you're an export-oriented company, you can target Exim Bank. You can target state finance corporations. Like I live in Bangalore, so you have the Karnataka State Finance Corporation over here, KSFC. You can target them. So specialized financial corporations which are there. So I think everyone, banks are the biggest givers of capital. They will be more than happy to help, given the guidelines of the government right now, where you will be eligible for collateral-free funding. Of course, there are certain application criteria to it. There are certain restrictions to it. I would encourage you to read circulars which have been circulated by the Ministry of Finance, and go to the SIDBI and Mudra websites or to any public sector bank's websites or bank websites, frankly, to understand where you can get these things from. Another good area to get MSME funding from is the small finance banks. So these are banks which understand smaller companies quite well. So I would also encourage you to go to whichever small finance bank is in your locality, go to their website and see what schemes they have. You will find a lot of help. If you still don't see what you like, feel free to contact me. Raghav Tibdewal again requests you to please clarify what exactly is fund of funds. A fund of funds is an apex investment vehicle, which basically so it's a master fund which invests in other funds, which invest in smaller funds, which in turn invest in companies. So the government gives, let's say, 20,000 crores, for example, to a fund of fund, for example, right? Now that fund of fund will deploy the 20,000 crores into, let's say, 20 different funds. At, let's say, for example, 1,000 crores each. Now, one might be a healthcare fund, one might be a Maharashtra-oriented fund, one might be an agricultural fund, one might be a fund which is focused towards minorities. So the funds could have different themes attached to them. But the fund of funds is the apex entity which finances all of these funds, which have their specific investment criteria, which in turn invest into companies, specifically the MSMEs. I hope that clarifies the question. You can also Google fund of funds. You'll find a lot of information around it. Anonymous attendee, as an MSME, how to raise debt? Will any Indian bank give automatic loans to all MSMEs? I think this has been clarified in question number 1. So, Mr. Raghav Tibrival's point, I have already mentioned banks, SEDBI, Mudra. You can approach public, private sector banks, cooperative banks, huge area. Cooperative banks, regional rural banks, if you're a rural company or if you're a rural borrower, small finance banks, SIDBI, Mudra, Exim Bank, State Finance Corporation. You have so many people or so many institutions who can finance you. Yes, Indian banks will give automatic loans to all MSMEs. This is exactly what the Indian banks are bothered that what if I give an MSME loan and the MSME loan defaults? So you know, since the government of India has given a sovereign guarantee that they're willing to underwrite 3 lakh crores worth of MSME loans, obviously subject to specific criteria being met, right? So you are covered. I think banks will be more than happy to lend to you now. Mr. Sumon or Mrs. Sumon, I'm not sure who this person is. With new SOPs in workplaces, SOPs means standard operating procedures in workplaces and way citizens shall live henceforth. Certain businesses like travel, tourism, fashion, and entertainment are likely to suffer heavily. How to tackle unemployment in the sector? It's a very good question. You are right. You know, real estate, travel, tourism, hotels is going to be affected. Airlines is going to be affected hugely because people will, not travel that much. They will not want to take the risk. Neither will they have the funds because they're not earning that much. So they are going to be suffering. Fashion, I don't know. Fashion may still do well. Entertainment, I think, will do very well in certain areas like digital entertainment, which I already spoke about. Offline entertainment, of course, will not do so well because people will not be coming into malls, etc., for fear of risk till a cure or a vaccine comes out. So, how to tackle unemployment in the sector? I think, people should upskill themselves or reskill themselves. So, if I'm a finance executive, for example, like I'm a finance executive, all I know is finance, right? So, if I was employed in a travel or tourism company, I would look to go into a manufacturing company or find another job somewhere. So basically, there are sector-specific things, right? Manufacturing, marketing, finance, HR. These are things where you can jump across industries. If you are a blue-collared worker who is, let's say you are a hotel waiter, or you're a hotel manager who only knows about, the hotel management, then I would encourage you to reskill yourselves, upskill yourselves so that you are employable in other areas as well. That is the only way to tackle unemployment in the sector. Skilling, education is very important. An old proverb, feed a man for a day. Sorry, give a man a fish. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish and you feed him for life. So that skilling is a major initiative of the Indian government, and I think that will help us tackle unemployment. Mr. Alok Biswas, what is the future of MFIs in India, especially physical group meeting model and collection in cash, digital collection, digital documentation? Any equity investment are you expecting to the MFI sector? How 2% subvention in Shishu loan will help MFI customers, as most of the MFI loans are under Shishu loan? Very good question, sir. I think MFIs have a good future in India because they are financing the people who are forming the base of the economy. So yes, there will be some stress to MFIs, right? in the near future because of liquidity, because of repayment issues. But I think it will be in the near to short to medium term. In the medium to long term, a year from now, the sector is going to bounce back like crazy, and it will become very attractive. So a lot of investors are hunting around and looking at quality deals at attractive valuations, right? Currently, so if you are an MFI which has more than $100 million portfolio, more than 750 crores of portfolio, 750 crores, then I think capital will be coming to you, no problems. There'll be a lot of capital chasing because you already built that scale. For MFIs which are below that size, I think you have to have something very, very, how should I say, unique about you, or something very compelling about you. As an example, I would like to take the case of a company in Calcutta called Uttarayan Financial. Now, Uttarayan Financial is an MFI in Calcutta, and they are very profitable, even though their portfolio is not more than 250, 300 crores, right? But they are very profitable. They're one of the most profitable MFIs in the country. They're very efficiently run. And just taking an example, to make a point that in their case, why an investor would find them compelling, in my opinion, is because A, they are very profitable, and two, they are very efficient. So if other MFIs of that same size could run on the same levels of efficiency, profitability, they would find it very compelling. Another example of an investor finding an MFI compelling would be if you have digitized most of your processes or a lot of your processes. MFI is typically a physically led, which is your question also, Mr. Biswas. It's a physical group meeting model and collections and cash. That I think is going to reduce over time. Physical group meetings is a burden to borrowers because they have to forsake their day's earnings. If they participate, so that there is resistance from them on that point. Collections are in cash, which have their own issues, right? Which have fraud issues associated with them, which are security issues. Digital engagement with customers, digital collections, digital documentation is the future. So documentation might still be physical with the microfinance customers for the foreseeable future, but digital collections and digital engagement is going to be picking up dramatically. I think customers need to be coached how to give UPI payments, how to give payments through Google Pay, how to give payments through Bheem, how to give payments through Paytm. Basically, any cashless way is what the MFI sector should be looking to move towards. MFIs have already done a very good job on cashless disbursements. I think cashless repayments is where the MFI sector has to work on. I've already spoken about equity investments that we are expecting in the MFI sector. I told you large MFIs will get capital. Smaller MFIs will get capital if they have a differentiated offering. 2% subvention in Shishu loan will help MFI customers, as most of the MFI customers loans are under Shishu loan. Yes, I believe if an MFI customer is under Shishu loan, this 2% subvention will help them. Although the basic bigger issue is that if they can keep their family healthy. So I would recommend to all the MFIs who are listening to this webinar to focus on basically giving life insurance and health insurance to your clients, because if something were to, God forbid, happen to your clients, in times of this pandemic, they will be, taken care of, right? So that's what I would suggest. So more than the 2% subvention, I think your insurance, your education to them about what they should be doing in these times, your support to them on the softer side as to how to run their businesses, what to do, that will make a lot of difference. I would also like to take an example in another financial institution, right, which I know about, called Avyom Housing Finance, based in Delhi. So they are a housing finance company, which is an affordable housing finance company. And they were in Rajasthan, in places like Bhilwara and Ajmer and other places which were hugely affected by the coronavirus crisis, pandemic. They had instructed all their field staff to be doing PDS, the public distribution system of grains, to be helping, people with, especially older people, with medicines that they might need. So their field staff were running around the villages and towns, helping their clients. So I think, helping your clients in this time of need through other, initiatives other than loans right? Through helping them through kind, basically through effort, through relationships. That is going to take the stickiness and the loyalty of a customer a long way, Mr. Viswas. Mr. Amit Trivedi, what's your take on changing platforms, landforms for NBFC, specifically for smaller industry? How difficult or easy is it for smaller industry to raise capital, and how valuations of these smaller industries will change? What is your observation with respect to takeover of smaller industries? So a lot of questions, Mr. Trivedi. Let me answer them one by one. I think smaller NBFCs will find it difficult to raise capital, equity capital specifically, or even debt, because debt maybe because of the government schemes that have come in, they will find it easier. But equity is going to be a little bit challenge, unless and until you have. So there are certain sub segments within NBFCs which will do very well. For example, affordable housing finance. I think there is a huge thrust of 70,000 crores from the government. That's going to do quite well in the near future. For example, MSME finance. Now, MSME finance NBFCs, which can choose their MSMEs well, can do extremely well, can build a very good, healthy portfolio, and can be valued very attractively, can raise a lot of equity capital. So I am very bullish on housing finance NBFCs, on MSME finance NBFCs. I am also quite bullish on supply chain finance. So supply chain finance is the read of the hour. So any fintechs dealing with supply chains, I'm very bullish on them. So I think these NBFCs will continue to attract a barrage of capital. The others will maybe struggling a bit, but good business models will always get funded. I always say that there are no bad sectors, right? It's only management which can be good or bad or average. So for good management or for stellar management, you will always find equity coming in. Valuations will change. Valuations across the board, irrespective of sector, have gone down. In the NBFC sector, they're also expected to go down. No, definitely. So pre-COVID and post-COVID, there will be a significant difference in valuations. But again, as I told you, raising money now is key to survival, and you should raise it even if that means diluting a bit more. Is my personal advice to my NBFC promoter friends listening in. What is your observation with respect to takeover smaller NBFC? I think it's a brilliant opportunity. If you are a larger NBFC and you have cash and you see smaller NBFCs with good business models, good management, good field staff, good processes, good loan book, healthy loan book, give them offers. Ask them to join you. So acquisition is one thing where you acquire the company lock, stock and barrel, and perhaps you may not ask the founder to carry on. Another good option is acqui-hire. Acqui-hire, wherein you not only acquire the company, but you also hire, the promoter of the smaller company and say that, okay, I will give you an equity stake. It may be a small equity stake in the larger company, but he will be much more motivated to carry on and build your company, right? He will be effectively like a CEO of a vertical. And he will, if you can incentivize him through stocks, right? So for example, if you can give him 10% of your company, right? So some cash, some stock, and you give him 10% of the company, he can run or she can run as an independent CEO and do wonders to your company. Of course, you have to have that trust, you have to have that quality, but I think it's a glorious opportunity for mergers and acquisition. I myself am working on a fair number of mergers and acquisitions for the NBFC sector right now. What is Mr. Tejas? What if the startup solution for healthcare is not related to this COVID-19 pandemic? Specific, then will the investor's perspective, what will be the investor's perspective during the decision of investment? Mr. Tejas, healthcare as a whole will be doing quite well. Unfortunately, as India becomes more affluent, it also becomes more sick. Diabetes, kidney-related ailments, heart-related ailments, liver-related ailments, alcoholism, you name it. As a nation does better and better, their health becomes worse and worse typically. Right? Look at USA as an example. Obesity rises, diabetes rises, cardiovascular disease rises. So I'm saying general healthcare is going to do extremely well. Of course, if you're dealing with COVID-19 pandemic-related issues, you will see immediate, offers at tremendous valuations if you can come up with something, right? But even if you're not dealing with, Mr. Tejas, I think healthcare as a sector is going to perform brilliantly well. There are reports in the country of hospitals charging COVID patients 1 lakh rupees per day right now. There are some reports. Can you imagine what kind of money they are making at this moment? Of course, a lot of the hospitals are also struggling because planned surgeries are not going as you know as thought through. But I would also say that general healthcare has a very glorious future. Health tech, medical devices, fitness. So the entire, I think, wellness sector. So healthcare, hospitals, clinics, all of that. Medical devices. 3, fitness, right? 4, Ayush. So, Ayurvedic medicines, herbal formulations, organic food. All of these are contributing to wellness, which is going to be a huge sector going forward. That is my outlook. Sorry, Mr. Tejas again. Is there any government of India special initiative for these tech startups that are specifically working for healthcare sector? I think every sector has initiatives, so you have to log on to the Ministry of Health and look up the specific initiatives that they have. It would be unfair of me to take up bandwidth of everyone on this call for every individual sector. So yes, but the government has schemes around healthcare. I am aware of them. They are very attractive. So I think you should do a bit more research on it and take advantage of what the government is offering. Mr. Raghav Tibdewal again, what makes you think that starting a new business this year will be a problem? Well, capital is going to be a problem, first of all. So if you have a lot of capital, good, great. Now, even if you have a lot of capital, how are you going to attract people? Any employee who takes up a job right now will be looking to typically go to a bigger brand where his job profile is more stable. I think people, with the amount of risk that the coronavirus epidemic is throwing at them, they become more risk averse. They have become more risk averse, right? So they, if I'm just saying from my personal point of view, and I've spoken to many people, many professionals about it. If you need good managerial talent, rather than go to a startup, they would rather be employed with a Reliance, or an HDFC Bank, or a Dabur, or a Hero, or basically any market leader where they have a stable job, right? And till they have built enough savings. See, people usually join startups and smaller companies when they have either you have to give them a lot of ESOPs and a lot of equity shares. Otherwise, you have to incentivize them financially. I don't know how well capitalized you would be to do so. Even if you are well capitalized, he or she will think twice before doing so. So one is capital, second is availability of talent and the ability to attract talent. And the third is consumer demand. See, every consumer is living off his savings right now, whether rich or poor, during the lockdown, because there was hardly any economic activity, right? Not many people were getting paid. Yes, white collar and all were getting paid. But most of the blue collar, most of the informal sector, they were not getting paid. How are they going to spend? So demand is going to come down. If demand for goods and services comes down in the whole economy, your ability to raise revenue also goes down. So these three are the factors: lack of capital, 2, ability to attract talent, and 3, demand. These are the 3 key points where I think there's going to be issues. Mr. Himanshu Vijay, how micro and small NBFCs will tap debt as banks are reluctant to fund micro and small NBFCs due to the exposure to unorganized sector? As I told you, sir, 30,000 crores has been released now for debt. PCGS scheme has been enhanced. So PCGS scheme, I mean, again, NBFCs are another thing. I will ask Ratish whether we can hold, a webinar specifically on NBFCs, because I'm in touch with all the banks. So I'm very happy to take you through them. But at this point in time, I think there's enough that has been said about the NBFC sector. I'm happy to take your call one-on-one to discuss this, because it's a huge topic, right? How to raise capital from, again, Mr. Himanshu Vijay, how to raise capital from small NBFCs having AUM equal or less than 100 crores? I think I've already told you. So debt capital you will get because of the schemes that the government has come out with. Equity capital is going to be a challenge unless and until you have a very big differentiating factor, like Uttarayan Financial, for example. Sorry, where were we? Mr. Srihari Pathak. What is best VC firm who can fund real estate projects in tier 2 cities like Mysore? Sir, this is my job. I interact with us, so I can name on the back of my mind at least 20 VC funds or 20 funds. I would say not VC is the wrong word. 20 funds which fund real estate, right? So this is an entire topic by itself. I would request you to contact me one-on-one. Even though real estate is not my focus area, if you Google a bit, you will find a lot of VCs who will be willing to finance good real estate projects at attractive prices. Mayank, Mr. Mayank, lending fintech has been one of the most funded sectors in India over the last 1 year. What is the view on the near future sector in context of street funding? I think it's going to be very challenging, Mr. Mayank, particularly because, as I told you, startups are going to be having muted demand. In case of loans, you will have NPS to deal with, you will have issues of talent availability, you will have issues of capital availability. The same metrics apply. The other thing is that a lot of the fintech guys are basically doing these consumer loans, right? So in consumer loans, right, I'm giving you loans as early salary, etc. Now your salary has gone down to 50%, 25%, 75%. The guy doesn't have money to pay his rent. So there's going to be a huge wave of defaults, which could be possible in the consumer sector. So again, I am very bullish, Mr. Mayank, on fintechs which are into supply chain finance, for example. So when you leverage technology to finance supply chains, I am extremely bullish about such opportunities. So again, it needs to be discussed on a case-by-case basis. Fintech is a very broad term, right? I would say we have to delve into the sectors. Again, happy to take it a one-on-one with you and see which are the sectors that you are alluding to. Because fintech by itself is an ocean. Insurance technology is also going to be huge because the insurance sector is going to do extremely well in the future. Mr. Rajesh Shirakol, service-based MSME are eligible for loans now, I suppose. What's the limit now? Yeah, again, these are schemes which are there for the government. I cannot get into this right now. You have to look into, as I told you, the schemes that are available in different websites. Mr. Bhairav Pandey, what is your view on the corporate debt market? Worth investing in NCDs, etc., tier 2 bank bonds? Mr. Pandey, as I told in my presentation, I think the corporate debt market, because of what has happened with Franklin Templeton, there's going to be a huge lack of trust of the Indian public towards it. Right? So I think it's going to be a challenge for corporates to raise debt. I would, at this time, be very picky and choosy about investing in tier 2 bonds, etc., which are highly risky asset classes, which the normal retail public don't understand.
Great. I think you answered almost all the questions over there.
I saw a few more questions. I think they disappeared towards the end.
I think when they exit the group, it tends to get deleted from the question and answer list. So I think that'll be a very good session now. I think the attendees also have your credentials, your email ID, and your phone number. So in case they want to have a one-on-one chat with you, they could probably even do that. Like to really.
If you just take a minute. Yeah. To all the attendees who are still there, in case you missed my phone number or my email ID, it's 988-67-89182 is my mobile number, and my email ID is Abhishek, ABHISHEK @Accela, ACCELA, fiduciary, FIDUCIARY.com. I repeat, ABHISHEK @ACCELA, FIDUCIARY.com, or you can add me on LinkedIn, whichever ways. So happy to help offline as well. I'm sorry I couldn't take all of the questions because of paucity of time. I tried my best. Sorry, Ratish, please carry on.
Yeah. So in any ways, the team will be sharing a mail to all the attendees with the YouTube link where they can actually revisit the entire discussion or the workshop in case they have missed out anything in the interim. And at any point, if you feel like getting in touch with ICC for any of the other programs, or for ICC membership, you can probably write into ashwini.gogare at indianchamber.net or arvind.kaur at indianchamber.net. I really thank Mr. Abhishek Fogla for spending his time for this particular workshop. I think it was really helpful for all the attendees, and I'm sure the kind of questions that has come in, it's really created a lot of inquisitiveness and the interest amongst all of them. Yes, thanks a lot, Abhishek. At any point, you have the attendees have your credentials. They can always get in touch with you. And this is from
again, Ratish, very heartfelt thanks, starting from Mr. Mayank Jalan to you, the West India leads, to Mr. Ashwini Singh and to Ms. Louisa. I think all four of you have been stellar, and I think ICC is doing a fantastic job. I must say, the amount of webinars that I'm seeing, the topics, the diversity of topics that I'm seeing, I think it's extremely compelling. I would encourage people who are on this call to become members of ICC if they are not already. You can gain a lot of value. Also, Ratish, I would like to propose, a lot of the questions were from the NBFC community, the non-bank financial community, non-bank financial company community. So I'm happy to hold another webinar shortly if you would like me to do so.
Sure.
And I can come back to you with a draft agenda,
Definitely.
right, which is specifically on NBFCs and perhaps HFCs, housing finance companies. So we can have a more pointed discussion there. I thought that perhaps some of the members or some of the attendees may have gotten bored with the amount of detail, but unfortunately these questions were directed at me, so I had to take them. But I'm happy to hold, a disproportionate amount of interest was shown in NBFCs and HFCs, and I'm happy to hold another webinar if you'd like me to.
Definitely, we'll discuss it in our committee meetings, and we can then probably state it out and take it forward. In the meanwhile, we may, by sometime in next week, we'll also have a follow-up session on a 360-degree view of navigating the currents of capital raise. This could probably happen sometime next week. Keep in touch with us on our social media sites, on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter for all the updates on the programs that we are doing, not only in here, but there are a lot of other programs in various other sectors which you can attend. Just keep in touch with us on a social media platform for because there's a lot that we can actually keep mailing you on. So we just want to keep it discreet, and we'll only mail you on the ones which we feel is very relevant. That's all from my end. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, everyone. Signing off.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.